Yeah, so we're going to put together a little sync panel for you now to try and get as much information to you as we can about how to be really well prepared, what to expect from a sync, what things to do, what not to do. Obviously, that's the title of the panel. So we have on my left here, we have Mr. Dan Garber, who is from the Tape Music Company. He's a co-founder and director. He's going to tell you a little bit more about what they do in a moment, but it's an independent music management company. And they're working in the fields of sync, branding, promotion, PR, and full releases. We have next to Dan, Nathalie Dubois, who not only has just won a 10K race, which she deserves a round of applause for immediately, putting us all to shame. She's also the founder and co-owner of 6 Degrees Entertainment, which is a fully independent music company representing a wide roster of artists for TV, film, and the commercial sector. And also doing some consulting kind of stuff. So next to Nathalie, we have Vikram Gudi, who runs Elephant Music and Fair Split Music. He's a music sync expert who's well known for having networks all the way from LA to Mumbai, which hopefully we can touch on later, because I've not heard a lot of people doing the sync stuff over in India, so that's really interesting in itself. But prior to Elephant Music, he was, I believe, at Imagine. So really, I've seen Vic on loads of panels doing this sort of stuff, so hopefully you get some pearls of wisdom from him. So what we're going to do to start with is we'll just talk to the guys about, if you give us a real brief sort of summary of what your typical week would involve. So Dan, what would you be doing in relation to all your activities, but of course in relation to sync on a normal week?
Wow, that's a big question. A normal week. I don't think there's...
Well, of course, there is no such thing for any of us in here as a normal week, is there?
So I've got, first and foremost, I've got a couple of hats that I wear. So we've got our management company, which is called Tape. And so we manage a couple of artists and producers. And we kind of also facilitate the releases of those acts if they want to retain hold of their rights, which we're presume go more into later. And then there's another hat which is probably going to be quite interesting for you guys as well. I'm a director of a company called Record Play, and we are a music consultancy, and we consult brands on how to use music with their marketing campaigns. So that is mainly through sync, but it's also through endorsement as well. So I manage the UK team there, but they kind of do all the work, which is great. So a lot of my week is delegating. A lot of my week is on the phone and meeting face-to-face with the artists, because I make time for them. You know, it's really important that I know what they want and how to kind of manage that. And then a lot of the time is meetings and flights and stuff like that. And it sounds great, but it's tiring. But it's great. But it's tiring, but it's great.
Thank you, Dan. Nathalie, what about you? What's the typical week for someone with so many things going on as yourself?
There's not really a typical week. I think, like Dan, my week is primarily focused on a combination of consulting. I do quite a bit of guest lecturing as well, and also helping businesses and artists get back into the US and media and entertainment. So I end up advising a lot of artists that I work with on their contract negotiation, on helping them get sync placements, and also just advising them on their publishing deals. In terms of record labels and publishers that I work with, it's primarily getting them into the studio systems in LA and New York and in the TV shows.
So that's the TV studios who oversee certain projects?
Yeah, so the TV and film studios that oversee the TV shows and films. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Ashley. And Vic?
Sorry, similar to Dan, like you wear a couple of different hats, so...
You guys are just copying me.
You said all the obvious things. As Elephant Music, it's a lot of listening, so demos, going through artist contracts, figuring out which ones are expired, renewing, a lot of lunching and meetings, taking out clients, basically bribery through lunch. But no, just trying to get work, because, I mean, you can call people on the phone, but there's nothing as good as FaceTime, catching up with people, finding out all the tiny little jobs they're working on, and, you know, all the things that are coming up for the next year. And then in terms of the publishing company, it is quite structured. So Monday is kind of like an admin day where we kind of plan the next few weeks, figure out where everyone is. There's about 6 of us there. Tuesday we deal with the most boring part, which is like publishing admin and registering tracks and PRS and how everything's going internationally, chasing our sub-publishers and all that really boring stuff. Wednesday is our new music day, so we send out music to music supervisors, to agencies, to trailer houses.
And music supervisors, just in case people aren't aware of the term, they are the people responsible for the different projects, putting the music into the film, into the advert, into the... Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. A lot of us do a bit of that on the side too, and some people do it full time. Some people are in-house at agencies or at TV studios. And then Thursday we kind of do an A&R, which is just a full listening day, which is just back-to-back music, skipping through. And then I don't work Fridays.
Fair enough. Yeah. Okay, well, what we'll do to start off with then is getting a sync in the first place, how to be prepared before you even get to talking money and talking all those kind of figures, and just things that you should be aware of to make sure that you're not alienating yourself from opportunities. Something that we touched on backstage, Nathalie, something you feel very strongly about, is that they should be going after the right shows, send your music to the right places, and no way sending it. Maybe you can talk about that a little bit.
I mean, I think the primary thing for film and television placement is you really have to know your music before you even start the process. So do your research, look at the shows where you want to get your music in, and find out what they're using, because that will give you a direction of the genre and the type of style of music they want to use. So once you get an idea of the style and the direction, then put together a couple of your best tracks and get it really at the point where it really showcases your talent. And once you have 2 or 3 tracks that you feel really strongly about, then you go through the pitching process. You find a company that works with those shows or works with that supervisor, and you work with them to getting that song in the show.
How's the best way of doing that? How do you advise finding those companies? Is there a place that people can check to see who is repping this show and that show? What's the best way there?
No, I mean, there's quite a few agents and publishers that work with the various shows. I mean, all of us, work with different shows in the US and the UK. But I think the biggest thing is knowing your music. And once you know your music and once you know what will work, is get it to the right people. And
the
then
more work you do, the easier it is for the person that's going to represent you. So the more you put together where you think songs will work in certain shows, maybe looking at past episodes. I think a lot of these websites,
IMDb. I mean, a lot of the music departments are in IMDb. Like for films and TV shows, and it's quite easy to research. You can just Google music supervisor show, and more often than not, there's the supervisor's done an interview with a magazine or has been on a panel. It's pretty easy to find these days, I think. Or just watch the show and look at the credits.
Exactly, yeah. And I think Spotify playlists, is that a good place to see? A lot of the shows now are putting up their playlists of what they've had in.
When I say researching the shows, most of the shows you can go online and watch the entire episode and then get an idea of their playlist, and then those playlists will be duplicated on Spotify as well. But really get to know the music, and a good example, and we were talking about this backstage, is CSI. You have CSI Miami, CSI New York, CSI LA. Every single one of those has a different musical direction for the show. So, for instance, if you look at CSI LA, you want to pitch songs that are similar to what they're already using in that show, and you want to be quite specific. But that's what I mean by doing the research, is watch the entire episode, see what the direction of the show for that season is, and do that before you even approach a company about representing your music. Because the easier you make it for the companies that represent your music, the more likely they're going to be able to get placements of your music. Because every company that represents artists and songwriters have an enormous roster, and they're very short on time. As you can see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days a week that we're pitching music, but we may have to pitch 10 things before we get one placement. So it's very, very busy, and it means that we're putting in a lot of work before we actually see any money coming in. So anything you can do to make our lives easier will make it more likely that you'll get placements.
Yeah. And so Dan, from a management point of view, when you've got an artist that you're working for, where's the sort of weight of responsibility on how to go about getting those things? Do you expect the agent to do all the running? Should the publisher be doing some? Is the label doing some? The management, do you guys have a sort of relationship with agents like Vic, or?
Yeah, we've got a great relationship with Vic, right? So it's up to everyone to get involved, really. So we're fortunate enough that our artists have got publishers, so the publishers know what they're doing from their side, but at the same time you've got to remember that they've got a massive catalogue. So, and they've got priorities, and they've got like Backcat and all this kind of stuff, so you don't want to just leave it all to them to do. You want to do some stuff yourself and do some research, as these guys are saying, into who to contact. You want to talk to your publisher if you are published, so that you don't double up too much. It's very annoying as a sync agent or a supervisor to get sent like the same track from numerous different sources, because then you just like, how do I clear this, right?
Yeah. I think in America there's a lot of exclusive deals, right? Only exclusive. That's not as common here, and there's a lot of non-exclusive. People repping one master, people repping the publishing, and you do get this problem of the big music supervision companies who farm out their briefs to hundreds of people, and they'll get the same track from 8 people. And
how many people in this room are actually published at the moment? And then how many are? Okay.
The problem with non-exclusive deals is most of the television studios for the TV shows, they won't work with companies that do non-exclusive deals. And the reason for that is because years ago, songwriters were signing songs to multiple companies under different, so if you had a song that was called Sunshine, they would create another song title called, Sunny Day or something, and they would have 5 different titles for the same song and then give it to 5 different companies, and then the supervisor would get 5 songs with 5 different titles, but they were the same song. And because that happened, they instituted a policy about 5 years ago that they just do not want to work with companies that have non-exclusive deals. And because they don't want to get the same song from 2 different companies, and if they do, it causes problems with the company, but it also causes problem for the songwriter, because it gives both the company and the songwriter a bad name, because it's just something they don't want to deal with, because it complicates their life.
Okay, so before we actually get then to that point where you're sending your tracks off to people, it's really important, this phrase that you may have heard and keeps coming up all the time, metadata. And I think it's really easy for people to not do that properly. So let's be really clear, when you get tracks ready to send off, what do you need in that metadata? What do you need when you go into your record in iTunes before you send it out and you press apply and you can put the lyrics in there and you can also put other info? What info do you need to see in there?
Well, there's a minimal, and then there's the, if you've got loads of time. But the minimal has to be, do you own the whole song?
So that's, do you own the record side
or the publishing?
And so we better just explain that as well. There's 2 sides to a sync, right?
Right. So there's 2 sides to a song. So you've got the master, which is the physical recording, and the publishing, which is actually the rights and who wrote the song. And quite often with the bigger songs, the master sits with the record label.
So whoever paid for the recording time, basically. So
right.
if you're self-releasing, like I guess a lot of us are, you own your master if you've recorded it at home or you paid for your recording time. And sorry if I'm telling you stuff you know, by the way.
That's what we kind of manage for a lot of our artists as well, which they want to keep hold of those rights, so we facilitate the release for them and don't take those rights off of them.
But the other thing, just going back to what you were saying, when you go into the studio with, even if it's your mate who's a songwriter or a producer, make sure all the paperwork is done in that session, because it happens all the time, and I'm sure all of you have seen this. You do the studio session, everyone feels brilliant, everyone's like, yeah, it's 50-50, no problem. You don't sign any paperwork, then you get the song synced. Then everything becomes a problem, because now there's money on the table. So it's really important that you get all the rights cleared up front for who wrote the songs. Also, if you get an artist that sings on it, make sure there's a vocal release. All the paperwork, and the song needs to get registered with the PRS. That's hugely important.
So that's what I was going to go on to. Like, we've had a problem with a band that didn't really know what they were doing, and they kind of, to get a discount on their recording rates, they gave away some of what they thought was a cut of the master. So they actually gave away a cut of the publishing, and it was 30%. And this guy was published with Domino, And then going forward, a lot of the people we work with actually require us to control 100% master and publishing.
They need to clear it really quickly.
Yeah, well,
so say it's late
they
at
just
night.
they just won't let us pitch this whole
okay.
album because it's 30% domino, which makes it very difficult to negotiate. But going on to what you need on the metadata, who owns the master, who owns the publishing, definitely your email address. Sometimes your phone number can be useful too. You might as well put it in. And some people do ask for lyrics. What's that?
You put that stuff in comments.
In comments, yeah. And a lot of people do like genre to be a lot more specific. So any keywords like female, vocal, guitar, drums. For certain genres, such types of sync like trailers, I find they often ask for a lot of keywords in the genre. And you can put as many as you want. So again, it's about how much time you have. But if you have the time, do as much as you can.
But I mean, the basic things for the cue sheets, and certainly in the States, you have to have this when you pitch the songs. It's songwriter name, publisher name, who's your PRO. So if you're either with the PRS or if you also have a sub-publishing deal in the US and you're a member of one of those societies.
So
Also,
that would be CSAC, ASCAP, BMI.
Yeah, BMI, ASCAP, or CSAC. And then also, definitely genre, tempo, and who the song sounds like. People like to have references. If your song sounds like, a song that's currently on the Billboard charts, it's very helpful when people look for the song to know that.
Okay, so we're at the point where all the metadata is great. We've sent it off. We've got someone repping it. Let's talk about the kind of fees to expect and where the balance of money comes in, whether it's on the back end or whether you need to hold out for big money on the front end, and this nasty little term that seems to get bandied around, which is exposure, whether or not this exposure, when there's tens of thousands of TV shows a week, is really going to change your world. So where's the sort of balance for you guys at the minute? What are you seeing coming in fee-wise, and when is it just not acceptable anymore?
I want to echo what Roxanne said earlier. Like, it is a really exciting time to be in music. Don't listen to the doom and gloom. Especially in the sync world, because there's so many more opportunities to get a sync. I mean, just look at Netflix. There's hundreds of TV shows on Netflix, Amazon, more TV channels than ever. The video game industry is booming. All these video games have music in the game, and they have trailers for the game. I think it's been amazing. I mean, I have noticed that advertising front-end fees, so that's the fee you get for the sync, have decreased in the last 4 or 5 years overall, but at the same time there's more ads being made. Online fees have, I think, nearly tripled since about 5 or 6 years ago. TV shows in the States, we're noticing that the front end is probably around the same, but the back end's increasing too, because they're getting so popular worldwide.
So the back end being the PRS income that you'll get from the thing being reused and watched.
Well, reused, but the main thing we've noticed is that a lot of the TV shows are going global, and that's kind of what we really want to try and get our music onto, because if you get a TV show that just airs in the States or just in the UK, then you'll get a royalty when it's played once. But if it goes global, to 45 countries, then it's literally 45 times more. Some countries paying way higher rates, like in Scandinavia, they pay like 4 times what they pay in the UK. So like, if you were really smart, you could try and target Scandinavian TV shows or shows that are big in Scandinavia. But I think the rates I don't really name numbers because they can vary so much.
Sure, but if someone comes to you and says, look, you've got a track for Better Call Saul, we want to put it in, there's only $500 each side, do you at that point say, but I'll be on Better Call Saul, or do you say, I'm completely undervaluing my music there? Where's the sort of the balance on that? I guess it's different for each artist depending on what stage they're at. But
it depends on the budget they have too. I mean, that might be the money they have.
You can say to them, I guess this is the thing that your supervisor, your agent will be doing for you, is it?
Well, I think you have to be very realistic about the fees, particularly if you're an independent artist. Your fees will go up as you get more credits. As far as the fee structure going up, yes, they've gone up because now shows are getting aired in multiple territories, so as you accumulate, you're making a lot more money. But the performance royalty rates in the US, if you just look at that market, have definitely gone down drastically because they don't pay as much for the ad revenues because you have all these online shows now. But you do have a lot more opportunities to get sync. But I think it's really important that independent artists be very realistic about the fee structure. And for TV shows, you know, it can start at 500, sometimes be lower than that, and then it can go up. But as an indie artist for a TV show in the States, you're not going to get higher than $2,500 for a cut on a TV show because they simply don't have the budget. Now, that being said, the performance royalties that you generate on a TV show that gets played a lot, you're going to generate quite a few royalties, and then as it goes into other territories, it's a good, you know, it's a good asset. It's like having a house that builds equity over time. So I think that's where, you know, it's really good.
In the UK, with the way we have the blanket license here, you don't get any fee up front for BBC or ITV, but you get the back end on it. So it is worth being realistic on the fee up front on a TV show. Vic, you do a lot of stuff with advertising. How do you find that differs?
Yeah, advertising and trailers, they definitely have way bigger budgets, but then again, there are no back-end royalties on trailers because of a sort of loophole in the PRO system, which means they give you way bigger front-end fees. Trailers is another big growing industry that, you know, like kind of wasn't as big 4 or 5 years ago that's now huge. But advertising, I still think, the thing with advertising is that the revenue, the front end fees have always been quite high, and if they really like your song, they will have the budget. But the back end has always been huge because these ads are airing like 400 or 500 times a day, sometimes in 25 countries, and it's always a bit of a lottery. I mean, we did a worldwide like Unilever advert in February, and we had no idea what we're going to get. You know, we sort of estimated between £5,000 or £10,000, and within the first 2 months, we got £25,000. So like it just depends on what the company spends.
It's a lot of clean dishes.
There's a lot of difference within the company. So we work with Adidas, for instance. So we manage a lot of their global campaigns, and we know that they have like infighting between them because they've got so many brands. So they've got like football, they've got women's, they've got originals, they've got Neo, and you know they meet up once a year to kind of fight over the budgets. And so like each brand will then have loads of different campaigns, and they're fighting between themselves about how much money they're going to have. And music is normally the last thought. So sometimes they'll be like, shit, we've got $5,000 left, or brilliant, we've got 150 grand. And I'm talking mainly for like TV kind of stuff right now. So it can be totally different. And we had a brand approach us for one of our artists recently, and they wanted to do a global TV campaign for 2 years, have the rights for 2 years, and they were going to do 15 grand all in, and we knew for a fact that was crap. So but we knew that because we did our research. We knew someone else who had a recent sync with them. We found out how much they had. You know, obviously each campaign is going to be different, but that was pretty poor. So we tried to negotiate, but they weren't going anywhere. But
I mean, ultimately, as the artist for these guys here, and for other independent releasing artists, you might not necessarily be in that negotiation. You'll be hopefully entrusting it to someone to do that for you.
Right.
But you would be giving them feedback on, look, I think we need to take a risk and say no.
Yeah, I mean, there's two ways of looking at it. Like, we could have taken that 15 grand and then got loads of promotion out of it, which would have been fantastic for that track. But the problem is that next time, for us in particular, because we've got a publisher, they wouldn't allow us to do that, because the next time that brand or that agency come along, they'd be like, oh, you did it for that much last time, so can you do it for that? And you got to set a precedent, you know, and that's the issue.
Yeah, I mean, there's a company that we work with, Wixon Music, who I know have had a bit of stick in the past for saying no. Thomas Golubich went on record as saying he was really angry with them that they wouldn't let Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young be used in the end of the credits for the last ever episode of Breaking Bad. But when he talked about the money, I think it was something like $1,500, so $750 each side, for the last ever episode of Breaking Bad. And their argument was, well, if we endorse that for a moment of TV history like that, what are our new artists and the smaller artists going to be worth? So he was very angry with them and called them out on it. But I remember sitting in the audience and thinking, well, maybe they're actually sticking up for musicians there.
Yeah.
So
Looking at it from both sides, I mean, I know Thomas Golubic quite well, and in the States, you know, he at the end of the day works for the studios. Those are his bosses, and his
If that's
bosses
his
are
budget, then
his bosses have told him these are the parameters of the budget and how much you can pay each artist, and he has to set that precedent.
But in that situation, in that case, I guess he's not doing anything wrong because he's working within his budget, but they're not doing anything wrong by saying no, I guess.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
they're not.
yeah.
But they also, just so you know, in the U.S., they're not going to look at, even though it was the last episode, they're not going to see that as, oh, it's worth more money. They're
Sure.
just going to see it as a placement in a
Sure,
TV show.
yeah.
Yeah.
And one thing which I meant to bring up before, which is in the being organised section, mastered instrumentals. It's really important to have instrumentals of all your tracks.
Always, because particularly, again, with TV shows or film, there's so much dialogue going on that when they're mixing the show, they'll try and mix it with the vocal always first. But if for some reason the dialogue becomes overpowering, they have to have an instrumental at their fingertips. And they don't have time. When they make that request for an instrumental, if they don't have it, you have half an hour to get it over to them. Otherwise, you'll miss the spot. So
Yeah.
it's really important.
And if you're on the wrong time zone, you just can't do that.
Yeah.
So always have your instrumentals. We did an analysis of our syncs for the last 12 months, and 85% of the syncs were instrumental.
Wow, that's huge.
It's huge because, like, I mean, for a song, especially for advertising and actually a lot of TV shows, for a song to be that perfect, that, you know, the vocals and the instrumental and everything syncs perfectly with the current dialogue and is, you know, no swear words. It's so rare. Like, it actually is quite rare to get a sync with a vocal.
It's not good enough to bleep it.
No.
That'd be great.
But
wouldn't it?
with that and being prepared and having, you know, the mastered instrumentals, have WAVs and MP3s, but also have stems, because I don't know much about TV side of things, but in the ad side, they will ask you to edit some stuff, and that's nothing on your song. It's just making it fit exactly. So to have all that ready, because sometimes they might do that in house as well.
So to be clear then, what we're talking about is when you get your record done and you get it mastered, and please get it mastered, because so many people are using this nonsense software online where it's 25 quid to master your album, and it's get it properly mastered. But when you're doing it, just put enough money aside to master your instrumentals, because if it doesn't match the track, you're going to give them a headache and they're never going to go to you again. And then, like Dan's saying, stems, obviously a lot of you will be doing stems, I imagine, so you can change your vocal levels and stuff before you master it. I don't think you'd necessarily have to master the stems, would you, as well? But have the stems available for your key tracks if you can.
And lyric sheets. I mean, if you can put lyric sheets together, that's really helpful. And particularly if you're ever recording in a foreign language, you have to have lyric sheets, because most of the TV shows, if they don't understand what the song's about, they're going to ask you for lyrics, and if you can't give them lyrics, they're not going to use it.
And is it enough to embed that in the MP3, or do you need the separate documents as well?
Usually they ask for a separate
both,
document.
yeah. Give them everything you possibly can. It'll take you 1 day when you finish your record to sit there and laboriously just MP3, metadata, everything, and then put your lyrics together.
To be honest, I'd just send them what they need, like so like an MP3 at first, or sometimes even a private SoundCloud. Some might prefer to stream it.
I'd definitely go for streaming option.
Exactly, and then they will ask for that other stuff. But as you said, just have it ready, because
So don't attach
No,
loads
just
of
have it ready.
MP3s to your email.
No.
You can imagine what it's like when you're sat there and your email's coming and it's another 80 megabyte sort of things
I
coming
only
through.
send a few as well. You know?
Yeah, that's the
I
other
had
thing.
someone the
So
other
hard,
day-
isn't it, as an artist to go, but I love that tune, and I know someone might like that for this, but getting it down to 2 or 3 tracks it's almost impossible. But maybe get some
Even
help
just
from
one
someone
track,
that
to
can,
be honest. I mean,
Yeah.
I had someone the other day come and tell me, like, yeah, we're going to send you like 20 or 30 albums, and just sit down and listen and where you think
Yeah,
you
do
you
your
place
job,
them.
Dan.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, what? 20, 30 albums.
You were going to ask something.
Yeah, just thanks. Yeah. Vic, you mentioned about Unilever, something about them, and you mentioned a figure that in the end it was 25,000. Was that correct?
That was from the back end.
that
they
was from
got
the back
there.
end. That could have been 2,000.
Right.
It just depends on the brand and what they're spending, which is totally different to the advertising agency. That's the media plan. So
Is-
that's sorry.
Sorry to interrupt you. So I'm just kind of clarifying. So is that what your company received, and then the artist got a cut from that, or is
Yeah,
that what
I mean,
the
it
artist?
depends on in this particular deal. The artist had a publishing deal with us,
Okay.
so we had a pre-negotiated split with the artist on what the publishing would be. But our job would be to go and collect the publishing, so it would
Yeah.
go and report to all the. I mean, when it's a global ad,
Yeah.
you don't have time to go to every minuscule country.
Yeah.
So you go for the the top 7 or 8 direct, report it all, and then the rest. We've got sub publishers in a lot of the territories, so they did it for us. But the rest, whatever comes in is split.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, the reason we don't like to quote figures on what's made from commercials or TV shows is because everything is different. So every campaign, like he had that instant with that campaign, but another campaign may pay completely differently. So it really has to be customized according to the situation.
And something you touched on there, Vic, about the admin and the collection. There's a lot of people out there at the moment calling themselves publishers who are maybe more sync agents. How important is it that there is someone like yourself or like an admin company, whether it's Cobalt or Wixen or any of these companies, actually doing the admin properly? Because a lot of money can get lost, right?
Yeah, I mean, admin is a really odd part of the industry that's growing a lot because there's so much to collect. But really, you need a company that's tracking well. A company with I mean, not necessarily. I mean, a major will obviously have the best trackers, and they will get every single penny that you're owed. But A, it's hard to get a major publishing deal. B, if you're looking for sync, a major probably isn't your best option because they have so much catalogue.
And you're up against all of their
Yeah,
artists.
I mean, what I would recommend is go for someone that's a similar size to you, but certainly someone who has similar music to you. Go for a smaller sync agent or publisher that specialises in your type of music, where your music will actually make a difference to their catalogue. I mean, maybe they've got 7 million songs. You're going to get drowned. But if they've got 600, 700 songs, you're more likely to get placements and more likely to get more attention for your back end as well.
But you have got choices to shop around, and there's also administration deals and there's publishing deals. They're different. So have a look around, do some research.
The admin deal typically being that they won't do the creative side, but they'll make sure they collect all your money.
Yeah, I
for you.
mean, they won't. Yeah, they won't I don't know. They do. Some people like Centric. They have on their website. So look up Centric. They're quite a good company. Some people say. Some people. Anyway, but they have on their website stuff that you can pitch to. So you can pitch your songs. So they have that available. They have
And
briefs
then they'll
coming
just
in.
take a higher percentage if they manage to pull off a sync for you. They'll take a cut
I
of
don't know
that.
how it works. I
They
think
do.
For
So
admin deals, do
the
they?
admin deals between 10 to 15% of your back end royalty, but they also register your PPL and your MCPS as well. They'll take a cut of that too. But then
Are you sure they register the MCPS?
I think they do. Yeah.
Even for an admin deal.
Well, you can. Yeah,
Yeah, they do.
They take all the rights.
But the PPL, that's an interesting one because we've just had this with an act that if you're self-releasing, you are the label. It's your responsibility to register the recordings with PPL, and if you don't, you can't get it used on BBC
No
or
blanket
ITV.
use. Yeah.
So if you sat there wondering why is no one picking this up, the first thing they'll do is check if you're on PPL and you're registered.
And
if it's
MCPS, they have
Yeah.
on their system a red and green light
Green light
system,
system,
and
yeah.
it will literally, if it's a red light, then they're just not going to go near your track. So, and they're not going to waste their time emailing you and saying, "Oh, can you please register this?" Because
They'll just replace it. Yeah. And we did 3 TV shows for the BBC and 1 for Sky last year. And Sky actually have their own system called Sound Mouse, and everything that's sent to Sky is screened, checked, greenlit. If it's greenlit, then it goes onto the system, and then all the editors and producers there use that, and all the music supervisors have to use that system. So literally, if you don't register PPL, you won't get on telly, in the UK anyway.
So it's a different thing between registering as a performer and registering as the copyright owner. So you need to register particularly for the latter. Okay, and before we just move on to the last bit, I know we had a question when I was outside about companies that rename your tracks, which is something that Nathalie touched on before. And we had this when we were first setting up our publishing, where a couple of, particularly in America, a couple of companies said, we're going to take all the stuff in. We've got direct ins. We're always in the edit suite with the big supervisors or with the editors and stuff. But we need to rename your tracks. And it's something that always frightened me as an artist when I was doing my stuff. what's your, just reiterate how that kind of...
Well, I mean, the reason people would rename the tracks is, again, just going back to a simple title. If you have a song named Sunshine and it's been used on TV shows before, it's been used in films, it's been used in commercials, and then another company wants to exploit that same song, they would rename it another title and be able to exploit it in order to create a new revenue stream for the song.
So they can show it was them that got that exploitation.
Correct.
And they are the ones that are now going to collect on it.
Yeah, but that might have worked 10 years ago
Yeah.
when you didn't have, all these powerful engines that you have now as far as on the internet, and everything wasn't digital the way it is now.
Yeah.
Now that just creates a lot of problem, because today the studios will double check the PRO registration online. They won't just go based on what the publisher tells them, and if it doesn't match up, it starts to really create problems, because every song title should have an ISRC number. They should have a whole tracking mechanism. And he had mentioned SoundMouse. In the States, most of the TV shows will use the parameters that SoundMouse uses for the metadata as well. So again, it's just really important that you have your metadata correct, that you have your rights ownership correct, and that it's all very clearly set out.
Okay, all right. Well, moving on to the next part then. This is a kind of really... Oh, well, we were going to take questions at the end, but do you want to, between each section? Yeah, why not? Let's do...
Hi, so I just wanted to ask, do you think it's actually worth us approaching music supervisors independently, or is it we better off spending time trying to get sync agents?
Yeah, I wouldn't. Because, I think we were talking about Sam Diaz earlier. Sam Diaz is a perfect example. He won't even work with a company that doesn't have at least 5,000 tracks. And if he doesn't know them or doesn't have a history with them, he just won't, because he's just so oversaturated. And it's a power of numbers. Each supervisor, they have to get songs for their shows, and they have to get songs from all over the world. So if they have a company that represents 20,000 tracks, they're going to be much more likely to want to work with that company, who also has indemnified the studio because they have a history with them, they have a contract with them.
They know they're going to get back to them at 11:30 at night when they've got 30 minutes left to put
Yeah.
the track in.
And they know they're not, the biggest thing is they know they're not going to have any issues with the rights on those 100,000 tracks, because that company understands rights. And with individual songwriters, or with situations where someone's the friend of the editors, the number of times that they've had problems is just gotten to the point to where they only want to work with companies they know.
So was your advice about the 3 tracks, picking out your best 3 tracks, really about approaching an agent rather than approaching?
Yeah, an
programs?
agent or a publisher or record label or someone that has a relationship with the studios. Yeah.
I think it's a numbers and trust thing. So, like, in terms of numbers, someone like Sam or another music supervisor is going to send a bigger company more briefs because they have, let's say, 25 different genres of music. And with getting more briefs, the number of briefs means that this company's more likely to get a brief than you, for example, that might have 2 styles of music. But the trust thing is what it really comes down to. These relationships between sync agents and music supervisors are built over decades. Down to the sort of certain people will get briefs that other people don't. There'll be phone calls, there'll be lunches, there'll be dinners, which you just won't have the time to do. So I think it's actually a numbers thing as well.
But it's also contractual relationships. I mean, companies that have worked with the studios for a long time have an actual contract with the studios, who are the bosses of the supervisors. So that once you have that in place, then that gives you a foot in the door in terms of to be able to submit placements.
It's important that, as Vic says, you're not going to be sent the briefs. But at the same time, if there's certain people that you can get chummy with, it's worth kind of updating them on what music you've got and what you're doing. I kind of see it a little bit like PR. There's going to be some media that are unapproachable. You'll never get to them. But at the same time, if someone likes your music and they get a brief,
They met you at a show, or
exactly.
You've got a friend in common.
It's worth letting people know, but some people might not listen.
And letting them know quite succinctly,
Yeah.
with a couple of links rather than sending the whole album.
Exactly. Don't put any pressure on them. Don't ever send them a track going, "I've got this track which is so syncable, it's going to work with this," because that
Cinematic.
Just, yeah, exactly.
It's so cinematic.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wanted to ask your advice. So I've had 3 songs synced in 3 different films, and that was me basically finding the director or me finding the producer, and it kind of flowed and it happened and I got paid and it was brilliant. I then got signed to a publishing deal kind of off the back of that, and then for 3 years, 4 years, however long it was, nothing happened. And then the publishing deal ended and I signed a non-exclusive deal in America, which apparently wasn't a great idea. But now I'm kind of at this point where I'm like, there's obviously traction with my music in film, and I've kind of reached out to sync agencies and supervisors, and I've done pitches, but maybe I'm not pitching it right. So what would be your advice to a music agent or a sync person? What is it that I should be, how should I be approaching them?
How do you approach them?
Yeah.
Well, I think you should find out, I guess, with the company that you're currently signed, like, what are they doing? What are they working on? You know, how do they approach?
For America, it's just specifically they have a run of 6 different studios that they work with directly, so that's just for that. But for the UK, trying to find an agent over here that can really fight my corner, because as you say, there comes this point where you just can't kind of juggle all those balls, and if you're touring or if you're in the studio, then you're not there pitching. And for me personally, I think that's the way that my music kind of, I earn a really good living from it. So how do I pitch to the UK market?
In the UK, I mean, first of all, TV shows are all going to go through MCPS and PRS.
Yeah.
So that there's not a whole lot you can do there. I mean, you can get to know some of the people on the shows, but at the same time, that licensing does go through them. It's going to be more with commercials and with films, and that's where you do want to have either an agent or a company or a publisher work on your behalf.
So how do you get those agents?
I mean, there are a handful of music supervisors in TV shows. Literally, you can count them on one hand. But like Nathalie said, like it's more about.
And they hate getting pitched to as well.
Yeah, they hate getting pitched to because
they're like, I find the music, it's me.
Yeah, exactly. And also, it's
Thanks,
like.
Dan. That's really helpful.
Yeah.
No one registers their tracks correctly too, which is super frustrating. So in the UK, the music supervisors for TV are 99.9% likely to go through an agent or a publisher direct. But I mean, there are a lot of agents in the UK. I mean, some might say there's way too many, to be honest. But
so what would you suggest for artists here who don't have a publishing deal, who want to find an agent? What would be your best way of...
Make a list of agents.
But when you've kind of got beyond that stage, when you're emailing them or you're calling them, what would be your kind of...
I wouldn't call them.
Okay.
That's for sure.
Really?
I mean, no, I mean, it's quite annoying, to be honest. You know, like, if I get a phone call, I hope it's a client. Not someone I've never met trying to pitch their music to me over the phone. It's like, what, play it over the phone? It's like, go to these things. These things are great. There's so many of them, like The Great Escape, Liverpool Sound City. Conferences are the kind of places where agents flock to, publishers flock to, music supervisors flock to. Networking is one of the best ways, like face-to-face, selling your music, to a person, getting to know them, getting to know what they work on like that way. An email pitch can be short and sweet, like 1 track, 2 tracks. I know what you're, like Nathalie said before too, like I know what you're working on, and this will fit it. Here, all you have to do is click it, come on. That can work really well.
But ultimately you're saying don't really email, just track them down.
Email's good, email's fine.
Don't call too much.
Don't put pressure on them. Don't like give them a call. I sent you an email an hour ago. Have you listened to it? Like, it's just don't put pressure on them, but keep them updated in a nice, polite tone. Like once a month or once a quarter. Not too much. Like
once a month is totally fine.
Yeah.
As long as it's not the same email every month, which I've had.
And like maybe say I'm playing a gig near you or something like that. Like the off chance that
And all your drinks are paid. And
yeah,
exactly. Another thing as well. As the copyright holders, which I guess you are in your situation, you can join an organisation called AIM, the Association of Independent Music Companies. It's an absolutely brilliant resource for networking events where you're in the room with all the right people. They have an online list of all the sort of email addresses of supervisors. They have an online database of all the producers for BBC Radio, so you can be targeting radio shows as well. It's obviously not a sync thing, but there are organisations out there. I mean, we put on Carousel nights every quarter where we have music industry speed dating, where you can get slots with experts if you're ready to to be in that situation. Obviously, there's no point booking if you're on your first couple of tracks and you're seeing the head of a label. But there are things out there, and I would definitely check out AIM when you get home today, because it costs me like £110, I think, for the year, and it's so worth joining. It really is. So, and the MU will have some links, I imagine, but AIM's a better bet.
But I think the most important thing is to use events like these and approach us and, tell us about your music and ask us if you can email us with links to your music. And then, that's how it builds.
But also, if you had previous syncs, like you're saying, make a show reel as well, because they want to see how your music works with the video.
There's nothing better than that. Like, hey, check out this sync I got. It's really nice to see. At least it showcases that there's potential there. Instead of sort of telling people what they should do, you should put this on this. It's way better to see work, I think.
And have you ever had it where someone has put a track where they've synced it themselves, pretended it
Yes.
was in something? I mean, that could work too. I used to add stars to reviews when I was sending review stuff out.
Actually,
You
in
can be a bit
the
creative.
trailer industry, it's actually encouraged. Because it's like a lot of people recut trailers, like they'll find them online and then they'll recut them with their own music. And that can work, but
What was
be
the film
careful.
that was done recently where they redid the whole soundtrack?
A Star Wars. Sorry, they redid the Star.
Okay. There was was it Pulp Fiction or something? Did any of you see this where they recut the whole soundtrack and they put it on? The original director loved it so much that they screened it outdoors on a big.
Oh no, I didn't.
I'm sure it was a Tarantino film, but anyway.
You've got to be careful though, because what you're kind of saying is I'm doing
I'm better
your
than
job
you
better.
are. Yeah,
and you made all the wrong decisions with the music.
Maybe stick to adverts and Cheerios or something like that. Okay, well, let's get to the next section. So, again, quite an open, obvious question, but what makes a track syncable? So what kind of things are on trend at the moment? What are the golden rules like? What's the most requested lyric that you've come across on a brief, keywords and stuff?
Well, I think one of the golden rules, certainly for TV shows in the States, is to really look at the Billboard charts. Look at the top 10 Billboard charts of, the pop charts, for instance. See what songs are really popular on the radio. Because all of the TV shows, particularly the ones that are geared towards, I would say, that 14 to 20-year-old sweet spot, they are going to be looking for songs that sound like what's currently on the radio. So if you use that as kind of a guidepost and then start writing, you don't even need to write songs that are in that genre, but if you already have songs recorded on your album that sound similar to that, then that's a very good starting point.
As opposed to looking at what's in the top 10 Billboard and then sending a miserable acoustic,
Yes.
self-reflective cover, which is what I used to do.
Don't write off miserable acoustic, because there's a big market for that in the States as well.
Yeah.
There are a lot of dark TV shows and there are a lot of emotional TV shows that want that too. But I think definitely look at what's on trend. You've got to remember, like in advertising and as well, like creatives are super hipsters. So look at blogs, look at what's trending, not necessarily what's in the top 5 as well, but look at the kind of stuff that all the cool kids are listening to. But positivity is just a trend that never goes away. Positive, uplifting music.
Because ultimately you're selling a product. If they're going to sell something with your music, it needs to make the listener feel.
There's a lyric theme that has never gone away too, which is building, growing together, warmth, families.
Home. That word home always
home.
comes up.
I mean, with ads, anything goes. I mean, there is no kind of standard, but they do like stuff that build. That has a crescendo and stuff. But anything goes.
So the uke's still in.
Uke is massive.
Still in. The uke's still in. That's good.
But anything goes, and there's so many different brands, there's so many different campaigns. What we've tried to do with Adidas is try and get them some sort of audio branding, like control for each of their brands, so that people can identify when they hear something. But every single advert has a different team on it, like a different advertising company, a different creative, a different director, a different editor, and they all have their own ideas, and you've got to pass it through all of them. So they're like, sometimes you get a brief saying we want Rolling Stones, and you end up with Diplo, and it's like, it just changes all the time. And so you shouldn't. I know what you're saying about TV, but with ads, anything goes. I mean.
And how important, what you're touching on, Vic, about them being hipsters, how important is it what you have going on in your career around the song for advertising? Because a lot of the time, I imagine it's not enough to have an agent or a publisher and expect them to just get you syncs if you're not out.
It's not as important as I don't think it's as important as it once was. I mean, if you look back at the sort of Levi's ads, and the big Lynx commercials, it was all so tied in with the brand ban thing where, it would be the biggest thing of the year when this ad came out, and then it would instantly go #1. I think there is still an element of that. There are a lot of brands that
they do want to know that people are into your music to a certain extent. Like, we've worked on a lot of stuff where brands that we've worked with wanted stuff before it's released, and so they can align the release with the release of the advert, and then like the PR for the song will help, and everything goes hand in hand. It's a successful campaign and everyone's happy.
Yeah.
But that's.
But it's not necessary. I mean, all the major labels have their own brand department now, right? It's like brand and band department, and they'll work with the campaigns. But there's so many ads that are just tracks, library tracks. They don't have any. They're just like a code. So it's not essential, but it can help when selling.
It's not going to hurt, is it? If you're getting out and being as
definitely
active as you can be.
There's so many different layers of ads as well. So you've got like product launches, you've got internal stuff, you've got online, you've got TV, you've got radio, there's so much out there, and they all pay vastly different amounts as well. So be conscious of that. If a big brand comes to you and they just want like a product launch or a kind of internal ad, they're not going to have much money for that. So just going back to that thing, but it is different. But there is some identity there with brands. So
I think going back to that with the money, I think the most important thing is you want to do whatever you can to build up your show reel. So take on every opportunity, because every one of those you can add to your show reel, and that'll bring you credibility, and that'll over time increase your fee and your value and your worth and your opportunities as well.
And it's good PR, I guess, for yourselves to show that there's stuff going on that you can have on your website.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a show reel, it doesn't have the price of what you got paid.
Of course.
It could be anything. As long as it's good work, that could actually make you more money in the future, especially for composers. Like a lot of composers starting out just do very, very small jobs, but they've got to build trust with the client. That there has to be a level of a sort of base level to start at.
I mean, definitely, for instance, if you're an independent songwriter or composer and you really want to score a film, your best bet is to approach an independent film that's got a really small budget and offer to score it for no upfront fee, and then just as long as you're on the cue sheet. Or the other way to build up your show reel is to approach, people that that are putting short films together. Because if the short film makes it into a festival and does really well, that'll open up doors for full length.
And then if it gets distributed, the short film or the feature length, then that's the point that you negotiate fees, But you can give your stuff away for free to use at that point, but just make sure you kind of deal with that.
Do you guys think that is a good... I mean, we've always, from our point, said that you shouldn't be offering to work for free, that you have a value.
But you're not working for free because you're still getting the back end, and you're still insisting on the cue sheet.
I mean, I wouldn't do it with adverts, but with films or...
Definitely with
and if you get a relationship with a director, that could become a relationship that lasts a whole career.
Yeah. I think composers are slightly different because composers get their work based on reels, so like you're not going to get turned down because, or you might get turned down because you don't have a reel. So, starting up, even just asking for a nominal fee that covers your transport, like a couple of £100, but the opportunity to do a film means that you're suddenly a film composer.
How are you travelling about? A couple of £100.
My limo's quite expensive.
Okay, well, we got 5 more minutes. We're going to obviously throw to questions at the end. Before we go to the question, you got one? Yeah, I mean, just the last thing I guess I was going to ask you is what to really avoid. What things of maybe one experience you've all had where something completely wrecked a sync that was in motion that was going to happen. A horror story, maybe. Have you got any horror stories? Look at Vic's face.
Yeah, I did an entire.
Let's start with Dan. We'll save you till the end. Then.
Yeah,
let's go down in order.
I did 1 hour on horror stories in Reaper Barn. I've got cumulative horror stories, but I'll let Dan go first.
Yeah,
I mean, nothing really springs to mind, but it is mainly from my side is to do with splits and just having that all put together. I just want to hear Vic's stories.
Nathalie first, ladies first.
Sorry.
definitely know your rights and know, what percentage of the songs you have, and be very upfront if you sign a publishing deal. I mean, most publishers will want to know, do you own and control the song 100%? And if you don't say that you do, because when you do get your song synced, that's when it'll come out, and that's when it creates a nightmare for everyone, including the studio and the publisher. So that's really important. And no samples. If you have samples in your music, then be upfront about it. Say, I had this sample, I didn't get it cleared, but most likely you're going to be way better off just removing the sample because it's not going to work for TV show or for film usages. My first horror story involves a sample. We had a trap artist called Hoochie, and we put him forward for... Now, he did sign a contract saying he didn't have any samples, but he didn't know that he had a sample. That's the problem. And it was a massive Drake sample. And it went all the way to the final edit. And luckily, we managed to salvage the relationship because we were kind of like, look, we have paperwork saying that, we were told. But then, luckily, we got him to re-record the sample in a kind of odd, legal way.
Well, Melodyne, basically.
Yeah, basically
hummed
the sample.
Yeah.
And we got away with it. But that could have gone so horribly wrong. I mean, that could have destroyed our relationship to the client, that the artist's reputation in the industry, the artist's relationship with us would have obviously been over. We've also had horror stories on certain brands. And, if you're not cool with doing McDonald's or, Shell or, I don't know, party political broadcasts, tell people, because until you have abstain from certain things, we're just going to pitch you for everything. And we don't know what you're into and what you're not into. And we've had a McDonald's ad pulled at the very last minute, the day before it was going on air, because the band was actually named after an anti-McDonald's book. I didn't know about.
Nothing like a bit of forward planning. Wow.
So yeah, by all means, you don't have to do all the brands, but tell people, when you pitch your music. And as you can imagine, if you do all the brands, it's a lot easier.
So questions then, are you going to ask sorry, we'll just chat first. Come on down.
Thank you so much for that. So my question is, I imagine, we'll all go home now, and, later, not yet, and wade through all the sync agents that we find on Google. And I'm asking...
But you will have got all your metadata done first.
Yeah, all of that
your
done
instrumentals
first.
mastered.
We're going to get all the masters.
Okay.
And sign up for PPL in an hour. And then, so what do you think we should... how should we be filtering between different sync agents? We see what they present online. And what do you think are the things that make a good sync agent stand out from a less good one?
If they've got loads of work on their website that's current, and that's a good start. If they've got relevant things to you, I mean, what kind of music do you make?
It's like acoustic indie folk, but with this rich electric production around it.
Electronic acoustic indie folk, amazing.
So,
I know what you mean.
There's a company called Woodwork Music, for example, that have a lot of
Manchester.
indie. Yeah, and that's a good place to start. You can't Google this stuff, but I mean, if you ask around, you'll get connected to the right people, I think.
Again, something like the AIM database will have a lot of these people in there.
The AIM database, I think there's a couple of sync blogs, actually. Mark Fraser has one. He just posted a blog on 25 sync agents. You can Google this.
If you look at all the events that have been on in the last year, Metropolis have a sync sessions, AIM have their regular sync sessions. Go online, look at the Reaper Barn Festival, look at the Great Escape, look at all those networking conferences and see who they booked to be speakers. And that will give you a big long list straight away. In a space of an hour, you'll have pretty much most of them covered that are active really right now. Whether or not you'll get through to them, you've just got to hope for the best, I guess. But just don't be annoying, like you said, with lots of... I know what it's like, because I was an artist for a long time myself, and it's so hard to get in everything you want to say in that email, but without putting them off and sending too much, yeah.
But I think also if you're just really clear about the type of music you have, he just asked you, okay, what type of music you have, and then also really clear about what you want to do with that music, what TV shows, what films, what projects, what are you aiming to accomplish, and that makes it easier also to find the right partner for you. We had another question here. Oh, well,
Well, we had another question here,
Hi.
but we're taking one from there.
Yeah. It's just a quick question.
We'll come back.
I think a lot of artists are concerned about saying no, that deal isn't good enough, and losing the whole opportunity. So if an artist got approached by a song for an advertising or a trailer and offered a fee, upfront fee, are they expected to negotiate or just say yes? Is it bad form to say, is there anything more in the budget, or should you just say, oh, thank you very much?
That's a good question, yeah.
I mean, I would think the first thing they should do is ask someone that they know that has some experience in that. Because even for me, if I get asked about something that I don't know anything about, I'm not going to respond until I've reached out to my network and kind of gotten a feel for, okay, what's appropriate in this situation. So I would say that's the first thing. I wouldn't just launch into a negotiation without having the proper tools to know how to navigate that negotiation.
But people expect you to negotiate. You know, they will be open to you negotiating, but don't be a dick.
It's not a deal. It's not a deal breaker.
I mean, seriously, like if they come and offer you a lot of money and you're like, right, I reckon I could get more. Like, just don't be a dick.
Yeah, but
like,
you won't be completely. It isn't. That's the figure and that's it. Take it or leave it.
No,
unless you're told that up front.
And it's not a deal breaker if you try to negotiate. I mean, like no one's
just
gonna.
Just be reasonable, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you can always squeeze like a few £100 or something out of something.
And it's about your song, you know. They've come to you because they like your song. So that, like, if they really think it's going to work, they'll go to their person who they need to go to and say, we need to get a bit of extra money. If there is, but they might come back and say, sorry, I've tried.
But you can ask if you wanted to. If you felt you wanted to or needed to, you could ask without losing the whole thing.
They will be honest with you as well. They will come and say, sorry, we literally have got nothing left, and you just have to work out if you trust them or not.
You got to know where you stand too.
Well,
I mean, you might be one of 5 tracks. You know, at which point, if you do ask for more, you're suddenly got a little red mark by you. So I would ask as many questions as possible.
Okay.
You know, first, like, where are we? How likely is this? Are there any people we're up against? You know, then maybe at the end, like, do you think we can get more money?
Really good.
Yeah.
And we've got one more question here, I think. Do you still have that question? Here it comes.
I don't know if you can give a bit of advice on this. We write together. We're married as well. But we decided to sort of, over the last sort of 5-6 months, try and pitch our songs to other artists. I'm a singer myself, but I just kind of thought if we can get them set with other artists, that'd be great. The problem I'm having is the first thing that anyone asks me, who are you currently working with? Who have you written for? And it's just I find it so frustrating, because how do you get out of this constant loop? You know, if you like my song, just like my song. Don't start thinking about who I've worked with.
Do you think they do like the song?
Sorry?
Do you think they do like the song?
No, they don't even want to listen.
Right.
I can't get past that first problem. That's the thing. And you know, we've been to a lot of sort of events, and we've played our songs, and to not people we know, not friends or family, and they all get great responses from people in the sort of industry, people like ourselves as well. And I don't understand how people like myself and people, you know, everyone here can get past that first hurdle of who have you worked with. I'm sure the same applies for syncing. Has your song been placed anywhere before? Or how can you get past that first kind of...
Who are you sending it to?
Oh, I'm looking up kind of, not massive publishers, sort of like independent publishers, and I can't remember the names at the moment.
Start sending it to like managers and artists directly that you think it fits with.
Okay. But will they not have the same... Who've you worked for? Who've you?
I don't know. It's like
they're less likely than publishers.
Yeah.
I think publishers don't want to invest money into something that, you know, it might be a risk. Whereas I think managers are more likely to take a risk because.
It depends. There's a lot of artists that don't want people writing for them as well, or want to do co-write and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's probably better to have that relationship with the artist and manager rather than the publisher.
Okay.
Because ultimately, that's one of the big income streams for an artist now is their publishing. So for them to take songs from someone else, I guess it needs to be really extraordinary, something that they can't do themselves already. But that's not to say it's not possible. I think if someone has sent us some stuff, I'd like to think it might take us a week to get round to it because we're a small team, but I'd like to think we'd listen to it, regardless of who you know and who you don't know. But
I send an email and I say, how would I go about submitting some material? And then they reply, and they just say, oh, thanks for reaching out. Who have you worked with? And then I respond and I say, well, I'm just sort of inquiring how to submit my material, blah, blah, blah. And that's it. I don't hear anything else.
I mean, maybe
And
it just goes back to putting together your show reel and start working on stuff and taking on smaller projects
Just have, like,
and
3
building a
tracks on.
show reel that way.
They don't want too much correspondence, so
Yeah.
just include a link on it, and then if they're curious, they check it in that first email.
Yeah, in the first email, because like already you've asked them to like send you 2 emails, and like I know that sounds really kind of.
Just submit it by sending it on the email.
Just submit it.
Stick
Yeah,
it.
private
they-
SoundCloud.
If you stick a link on the email and they don't get back to you, the chances are they either don't like it or they can't match it with what they've got at that moment. And do you know what? Don't take it personal. It doesn't matter. There's millions of songwriters and artists in the world. There's thousands of publishers. There'll be someone. Just keep, as long as you stick to what you're doing and don't change what you're doing to fit rejections that come through. I just keep
Publishers
approaching
are a
people.
weird one as well, because if they're looking for a song for their artist, they will pitch that out to their songwriters, or maybe to a chummy publisher friend or something like that. Like, they keep it in house, you know. Like, it's in their interest to.
So, whereas a manager might be more open to getting some great tracks for his artist.
Yeah.
And is that helpful? I hope it's encouraging rather than discouraging. I think.
But
just
I
keep
think
doing-
the main thing is don't take it personally.
Yeah. Any more?
I think Vic kind of largely answered it already, but the question was where you do have a situation where the stars have aligned and everything looks great, and yet artistically it doesn't match your artist. How would you negotiate, or how would you deal with a situation where artistically it's just not right?
For who? Sorry.
The commercial agreement is kind of okay. We've got a good sync. Looks like it's going to be a good license or a good sync there.
So,
but
you
artistically
as
it's
a
not great
publisher
fit.
are wondering what to do about your artist.
Yeah, how would you approach it if that came about? Then?
It's different ways. I mean, if it's a single or a track on the album and it's going to be working with a brand or a TV show that they don't like or something like that, then it's going to be very, very difficult. However, if it's something from the back cat or something that they're not necessarily using, just don't shout about it. Like, don't shout about it. It's someone else's track. It's got nothing to do with me, you know? Like, as in, that's what the artist will say, you know, and you can just talk to the artist like that, I think. But I think it's, it's a piece of art. It's something that people are very attached to, and I think someone is paying to use it in a different light to what it was intended for. And I think you've got to be very careful about that. And I wouldn't place anything in somewhere that people didn't want it to be honest.
So if you had a question and you didn't get to ask it, I very much hope that Chris, Dan, Nathalie and Vic aren't going to run for it straight away. So I'm sure there'll be space to ask questions. Can I have a huge round of applause for our first panel and moderator? Thank you so much.